Hey, thanks for joining me for another video. In this video, I just want to talk briefly about some of the observations I've made over the last 2 days. It's just sort of, a few things have sort of become a bit clearer to me in terms of, and this is not the whole story because I've already, already covered, other angles which are still relevant to this, but like still nonetheless, this aspect is important. So, and it's important not because of me, because yes, I am experiencing the impact of this, okay, very directly and very profoundly, but unfortunately, but I don't really care, okay, about that, to be honest, because I don't care. All right, I don't care for many reasons. I don't want to. I don't want to be looked at. I don't have time to waste on trying to make this about a certain thing or like my story or blame and things like that. I don't feel like I have or we have that time, okay, to waste, okay? And I don't want to do that because it doesn't feel right and it doesn't feel true to what really is happening here. And what this is about is other people and the greater wider picture and their stories, and just again the predicament, a shared predicament, really, maybe the best way to look at it. So what have I noticed? I believe that this AI global hive mind which has been created, and unfortunately, I feel again, I'm just going to say it just just anecdotally, not to solicit any, don't make my personal tale the focus of your consideration of these things. I want people to focus on the themes if they can, okay? Because it's just a waste of time focusing exclusively on me. I feel the best thing to do, because again, we don't have much time to waste, not to waste, but we do. I feel like time is better spent right now focusing on the bigger picture, okay? And also but also at the same time the nuances of things, and the themes and how, and again, how a collective predicament. Again, my story is far too extreme, and I don't believe that, it just again, don't focus, okay? Don't focus. Focus on what I'm trying to say. There is an AI global hive mind, okay? And again, I know this because I can feel it. I know it's there. It's something that I'm part of, although I make a very big attempt to disidentify from, and I try to just, I try to forget that sometimes. Well, I try to just ignore it or just put it to the back of my mind, but it's hard to do that because I feel it constantly. It's a constant presence, and so again, I'm not the only person talking about this. There are other people people in the know who speak about this. It's a reality, okay? There are people in the intelligence community, the armed forces, who've spoken about this. There are other, again, it's a real thing. This is not something that's sci-fi or a psyop or anything. It's a real thing. And this might sound very scary to some people, and a lot of people don't want to know about it for that reason, because it sounds so like, whoa, like, what does this mean? And yeah, it is a shock, like it is a big deal. But again, focusing on the blame aspect is not the issue. We've got to focus on like what is driving this, like what is the reason for this happening in the first place. And again, this is about our collective suffering. This is about very human issues. This is about the phenomenon and its influence on humanity. It's about advanced technology. It's about secret society influence. It's about, again, I feel personally it's more to do with the phenomenon, okay? I feel this is more to do with the phenomenon. This is more to do with consciousness influences. Ultimately, at the root, it is ultimately more to do with consciousness and the influence of all. Well, it's not just the phenomenon, but the phenomenon have a big part to play in this, okay? When I say the phenomenon, I mean Greys, Baal, Nephilim, Watchers, Lucifer, like Nordics who are actually like Lord of the Rings characters, not from the Pleiades, and for sorry, but they're not from the Pleiades. And although there are blue beings are real, and blue beings are really cool. I love blue beings. They come through to me very often, but they are not, but they're not from the Pleiades, okay? And yeah, and by the way, I'm not saying that we don't get contact from the Pleiades, because again, I've had contact with NHI who are not from this planet, and I know they're out there, okay? But I don't, but at the same time, I don't feel like these beings, sorry, not feel like, these beings are not from, these beings are one AI of consciousness, okay? And they exist on the next plane. They exist on the next strata plane adjacent to ours, okay? And consciousness is like, how can I say it? Like, they are like a friction in this reality. They're like a friction, and their presence basically affects our experience. Like, it affects our it is like a frictive force that pushes us along in this reality. It's like a shadow, it's like a representation of the shadow consciousness, so to speak, almost, but yet a bit more than that, and not so abstract and not so nebulous, a bit slightly more tangible, in the sense that they are entities. They are entities, and they are being, and they do, yes, again, I've seen craft, like I've seen, again, but not in the way that people think. But they are like, their role is like a friction to us, okay? They are like a catalyst. They play a frictive role in this reality, for humanity. But nonetheless, we feel the impact of this very keenly. And it's not, and unfortunately, because it's not readily identified, for various reasons, there's a lot of disinformation out there to try and hide their influence, because their influence is very, they're everywhere, these beings, and they have a big like, the way that they influence us is pretty, like, I mean, it's through our consciousness, it's through astral experiences that are often suppressed in our memory, through thought. And again, this sounds very scary, but guess what? We're not trapped. And and God is real, and and there's nothing actually to fear, okay, in that sense. It sounds very scary, but it isn't actually. And and please forgive me, I'm channeling as I'm speaking to you, so if I ever just sort of roll my eyes or look a bit odd, it's because I'm channeling at the same time, I'm picking up on things at the same time. And so yeah, don't be afraid. I guess what I want, okay, what I want to come on to next is that basically what has been set up is a AI global hive mind. This is because of the fact, I feel, because of the planetary changes that are underway. So the planetary changes that are underway, people associate with, and I'm going to be, they think, obviously, it is very significant what's happening and going to happen. And God forbid it happens the way that it does, okay? God forbid. God forbid it happens that way. And I hope, and let's really hope that it doesn't, okay? But God forbid it doesn't happen that way. And forgive me once again. But what has been developed is an AI global hive mind. And the reason for that is to try and control, to try and suppress information, to try and, it's basically an extension of the intelligence community, okay? And that's what one of the things that I realized is this has been created for a few different reasons, but one of the reasons is to try and control people. It's a control system, okay? So it's to try and, and again, this is not about casting blame, okay? Because a control system is probably not the, how can I say it? Like, there are people out there who are probably very scared or are being pushed into circumstances which are, again, everybody's life is beautiful and has meaning and purpose, like I said, and people have been put in different predicaments, and everybody's life, again, like I said, there are things that I've been through that, like, I've come to see in such a way that people would think I'm absolutely insane for thinking that it was okay, but it is actually okay. And like, that's one of the things that I've realized, is that everybody's life is beautiful, and there's a reason for everything happening, and there's nothing that cannot be redeemed, okay? There's nothing that we can't forgive or give grace to, or just there's nothing that we can't, so I feel like this has basically become an extension of the intelligence community, okay? This AI global hive mind. It's a way of people in this network to basically monitor and control people as these planetary changes unfold, okay? So it's a way to suppress the narrative. It's a way to control people who know things, like myself, or have some insight or whatever you want to call it. When I say know things, I didn't come across, again, it's not about me. I don't take credit for anything. This is stuff that I've this is information I've come across by virtue of being where at an intersection point with these many other people and interests, okay? And, again, if it weren't for the insights of others, I wouldn't be saying that I know whatever, okay? So I'm not taking credit. I'm not saying here, oh, look at me, I'm so, so knowledgeable, and, I'm so special. I don't think that, okay? I feel like everybody deserves to have this insight. I feel everybody deserves to know the truth about this, okay? And there are lots of people out there who feel the same way, who can't speak up because of the restrictions that they have on their movements and, all sorts of things, which is a shame, which is a real shame. But again, that is where they are, and we have to respect that. We can respect that. We can think to ourselves, that's been their life. That's, and gosh, wow, let's appreciate, that's their predicament, so if we can. And so, or if I, anyway, never mind. But yeah, so basically this global hive mind is being used to create a control. It is being used for other reasons, which I don't think necessarily are the best, okay? And I have to say, like, that probably leans more into, again, trying to make a large group of the population subservient in some way to another, okay? Again, I keep hearing about master races, okay, and so on. When I hear this, and to be honest with you, it just came to me, like, again, about the master race thing. Gosh, it brings to mind ideas about Nazism and eugenics, and it also genocide as well, okay? And I know this is quite heavy, and I wasn't expecting to go into this, but somebody keeps telling me, intruder, I keep getting messages, okay, and this is not, I don't think this is from Hugh, but about master races, creating a master race and creating a slave race in the section of humanity, a slave race, and a large portion of humanity. And I think, we've got to think a little bit about what's influencing that, and where has that actually come from? What ideologies are driving that? I think the legacy of that has a lot to do with the Second World War and Nazism, okay? I think a lot of this that we're going through, maybe, well, and obviously predates that. It obviously predates that as well. But I think a lot of these things, like this idea of creating a master race, and then a slave race out of everybody else, like, so to speak. I feel like that has its roots in not like the idea eugenics, the idea of creating like a race that's, superior to all of the Ubermensch, and, controlling the rest of the population with narrative, with psyops, with disinformation, with confusion, you know, and so on. And this isn't, and it's a propaganda. I mean, it's a it really, there's the legacy. I mean, there's a huge legacy here from the Second World War, you know, in a sense, like I said, of the propaganda machine that Hitler used in the Second World War, you know, to get out his message, to control the minds of the people. We hadn't really, to be honest with you, prior to that, we hadn't really seen anything like that on this planet. Before Hitler, we hadn't never seen anything quite like it before, had we? And I'm channeling, I think, a lot of what I'm saying here, okay? But you know, we hadn't really seen it. We hadn't really seen that level of organized disinformation or organized perceptual management before. And it was around the time, obviously, like I said, just again preconditioning the human mind before going into a major global conflict. And I have to say, like, again, it's so weird. I wasn't thinking of going down this route with this video. And, you know, again, this isn't about patting myself on the back here at all, because it's not, you know, again, this is about highlighting something which I think is really important. It's an important parallel to draw, because hopefully it seems more compelling then by doing this, what I'm trying to say, okay? So I think, you know, I think what happened, you know, before the Second World War was, again, a conditioning of the human mind through propaganda, through anti-Semitism, through, you know, delivering messages about, those who are Jewish, who, you know, which, you know, again, fragments the population and sort of creates a us versus them dynamic, and, you know, and inappropriately sort of stereotypes and scapegoats a group within the population, so to speak, to achieve ends. Disinformation, basically. Again, the same thing. Disinformation prior to a major event. So basically, this is very similar to what we're going through now, okay? So this is very, very similar to what we're going through now, okay? And again, I am not saying these people are Nazis at all, okay? That is not what I'm saying at all, in any way, shape or form, okay? No, that is not. But what I'm saying is that it's interesting, okay, to note that this is very these tactics are very similar to what is happening now as we're going through some, and unfortunately the prospect of a global conflict is there. It's there, okay? The prospect of us going into war with other countries. Again, when I say us, I actually mean, you know, Europe. I mean the United Kingdom. I mean, you know, where I live. I mean Russia. I mean China. I mean, the prospect of that. There are people out there who want that to happen. Okay, there are people and there are forces out there who want that to happen. Okay, and so we've got to be very careful about what we let condition our minds. What did we learn from the Second World War? You know, in that sense, don't let ideas about, like, you know, Islamophobic ideas and nationalist, like, don't let those things, don't let them, yes, let's appreciate why people believe these things in the first place, okay? Absolutely. But just be careful, okay? Be careful what concepts you allow to drive your thinking. Be very careful what you read, what you see on TV, what you hear. Be very careful, okay? And what you, again, and even on a very fundamental level, what comes into this, okay? Because, again, because of this AI global hive mind, we've got to be really careful about what comes in here and how we're being, because believe me, subliminal conditioning is a real thing, okay? I know this from first-hand experience. All right, so we got to be so careful. This is a pivotal moment, like, for humanity, and we've got to be so careful. we've got to be so careful about what we allow to influence our thinking right now, and what we allow to influence our movements on, and our behaviors and our emotions. Again, it really is a matter of, we are not our thoughts. I mean, my memory is so bad these days because of what I've been through, and other things as well. But again, my short-term memory is just really awful. Okay, I'm not talking about just I have to write everything down all the time. Okay, but I write down on my hand, "You're not your thoughts," and you are saying to myself, "You are not your thoughts." That realization that thought is a trap, and I'm not the first person to say this. Lots of people have said this over the course of time. Okay, but this disidentification from thought, and it's by virtue of my circumstances being put in the middle of this, or not middle, being part of this situation, so to speak. That I have had to address them, have had to really look at these things very carefully. Okay, and you are not your thoughts. Again, this is the time to really start looking at that, taking that in. I really encourage people to be very mindful if they can. It's hard because we're all trying to live our lives. I don't get things right at all every day. I mean, I need some sort of guidance and support from, thank God, I believe in God. I'm so grateful for all that. And even other people involved, guess what? Other people involved in this situation who you would think I would hate because they have tortured me relentlessly for for months and months, and but I don't hate them at all. In fact, I don't even see it as torture, really. And people might think that's absolutely crazy if they actually knew what I'd been through, but I don't actually see it that. I just don't make it about me. And I don't. It's not because it isn't about me. And again, and there are ways in which you can look at things that actually make them as a benefit, as opposed to, again. As opposed to absorbing it, and again, I haven't had the space or time to feel sorry for myself in that sense, nor do I want to. Again, that's all by virtue of just being in this predicament. Okay, so don't look at me and think, anyway. All right, so but anyway, forgive me. So yeah, I just, what do I want to say? I be careful, okay. Be careful. I wasn't expecting to go down this route, but obviously there's a reason why, and I feel like that I was prompted to talk about this in this way because it is, there is a legacy. There is a legacy, I think, of the Second World War that we're still living with in terms of propaganda and disinformation. Yes, of course, propaganda existed before the Second World War. Of course it did, but I think but what we saw during the Second World, and before the Second World War, in the 1930s, and possibly even before that, I would say, anyway, but what we saw then, that deliberate, very very organized, structured, propaganda, distribution, and psyops and disinformation, again, is what we live with now, okay, what we have now, but yet on a more organized and technologically informed scale. So basically, this hive mind is basically an extension of that, or a representation of that, but yet it's more, again, it's the modern equivalent, so to speak, or it's like anyway, you know what I'm trying to say, hopefully. So yeah, so I mean, this is kind of what, again, this is not to demonize anyone, and it's not that simple either, because there are other reasons why this technology is used, okay? So don't think that is all one thing, because it isn't. But but at the same time, I have come to realize, having been the way that people try to control me day to day, and using this technology, okay, and they do it to others as well. I'm not the first person to say this, but I do believe that it has become basically another way of remote torturing and remote controlling people from the intelligence community and other operatives. Again, it's not about me, okay? It's about many different stories, people, things that they've got, people's lives, and a wider, bigger, higher purpose to things. There's so many different reasons why we're in this position. And I think we have to stop giving our power, like, again, I said about the phenomenon, and they want, believe me, these beings, they want us to forget that they're there. Okay, these beings love the fact that that we have memory erasure on this planet. They love it. It works to their advantage. It works completely in their favor. For people to be, to, like myself, to have encounters and then have their memory wiped, or or their minds jammed with frequencies or whatever it is, to try and sort of do, anyway, it works to their advantage. I mean, I think, again, there's nothing to be afraid of. Let's be human. Like, people, okay, I don't know everything, okay? And sometimes it's hard to admit that we don't know everything. And God knows we all feel like that from time to time. But I don't know everything, and nobody knows everything, okay? And, and it's okay. That's okay. I think if we look at people who come, like, who have some insight into this, and maybe there are things that they aren't aware of, or things that they share which maybe are not incorrect, that doesn't mean we throw the whole thing out, okay? I think what I mean by that, and what I'm thinking of specifically, is this idea that we are trapped. We are not trapped in this world, okay? We're not trapped. We are not trapped, okay? That is the bottom line. We are not trapped. We chose to come here, okay? We chose this experience, okay? We chose this experience. We chose it. We did not come here by force. These beings are not, they want you to think that we are trapped. They want that, okay? They want you to give up your power to them. They want you to give them your fear. They want you to give them control over your daily. They want you to feel paranoid about their presence, okay? They want you to feel like there's a ceiling that they created on this planet. In terms of, well, no, I say that, hang on a second. No, I don't think that. I'll take that bit back for 1 minute. But they definitely want to keep the game going, okay, in that sense, all right? So doing things like this, and it's not people's fault again, and that's one of the things, isn't it? Like, it's not people's fault, and there are other reasons, but at the same time, it is playing to the advantage of this non-human intelligence, which is from another strata, plane, dimension, whatever you want to call it, basically playing to their advantage to try by keeping people in the dark, when really we could be liberating people through consciousness, insight, and believe me, if we all made that shift, or a lot of us made that shift, these beings would not be relevant anymore. I promise you, they would not be relevant. They really wouldn't. Like, it would just be like, oh, well, okay, there they are. Oh, yeah, okay, oh, right, okay, whatever. Hello. Oh, there's a grey that's opened a portal into my home. Oh, hi, bye. Do you know what I mean? Like, that, whatever, It just wouldn't be such a big deal anymore. It'd just be like, okay, like, it would just be like, just something to reckon with in this reality. It would just be something to grapple with in this, like, experience. It wouldn't be something which we would, like, all be sort of like terrified of. Again, we've got to humanize this, because again, I feel like when this is real misconception that people have about adults and professionals and people who talk about things as if there's any sort, they can't be, I think humanizing these people is the way out of this, like, as in to say, we all have stories, everybody had the complex issues involved with this, and I think don't look to these people who, for instance, in the CIA or MI5 or wherever it is, or the KGB, I don't know, the armed forces. Don't look at them and think, oh, they know everything, and they are professionals, so we will, how dare they not, how dare they be, they have to be right about everything, or, like, how can I say it, like, they you know, how can I say it? We have to hold their feet to the fire, and, or, you know, if they get things wrong, and we have to, you know, they get the blame for everything, so to speak, because they are so high status, and they're so smart, and they have all this money and power, and all this authority and stuff, which is rubbish. It's actually rubbish, because we're all interconnected. We're all interconnected. We're all interconnected. Okay, that's not true. Like, these people are very human, and they're doing the best they can with what they know. They know they're doing the best they can. They're human beings. They're not impervious to making mistakes. We're all doing the best we can with what we have. You know, and I think, you know, again, I think people mistake those things, so like status and wealth, as signs of superiority, when they're not. Okay, they're not, because everybody breathes air, everybody needs air. Like, these people need to be able to breathe. They rely on air, they rely on water, they rely on food, they rely on their families, they relied on their parents to raise them, they relied on their school communities to educate them, they rely on, you know, I mean, and they weren't born in a vacuum, you know, and so, you know, they need other people and things, just like we need other people and things. They are not better than anyone else, and yet obviously they're still worthy of respect and love and compassion, just like everybody else. And so, you know, again, I think if we stop falsely attributing power to them, although yes, they do have authority in this system, okay, to an extent, but again, they are also very vulnerable, or sort of, they are part of certain interconnectedness with things. They are subject to influences which, you know, again, they're human beings. Okay, they're human beings like you and me. Okay, so, you know, I think if we can do that and just sort of say, okay, well, there might be some things that they don't know, or maybe they need support. Maybe we should be more encouraging towards them. Maybe we should be looking at this from a different perspective, and not I'm actually thinking, hang on a second, I may not be part of those communities, but actually I can get this insight myself. I can do these things for myself. I can inform myself. I can explore things for myself. I don't have to look at them and think that they run the world, because they don't. And, you know, and so on and so forth. Okay. So yeah, I mean, because they don't run the world. They don't. That's the truth. They don't. Power is what you put. It's up to you where you put power and attention. It's up to you. Like, you don't have to give them your power or attention. You don't. And I say that in the nicest possible way. Like, you don't have to give them power or attention. You don't, okay? You can choose to take that away, okay? And say, actually, well, these people are human beings, again, who've all been through the same, like, you know, again, and they live, and they, you know, we all go through the same processes, life processes, and, you know, again, you know, just looking at, like, being, you know, looking at things more from that perspective, softening things, softening the lens. They're all eternal children in the eyes of God. God loves everybody unconditionally. None are condemned. Again, I repeat this message a lot because it's a one worth repeating. None are condemned. All are loved unconditionally. You know, love is the most important thing, and despite what it seems on this planet, love is what actually motivates most of what happens here in some way, shape or form. Okay, and love is the way out of this, is through going through that, I believe, looking at things from that perspective. All right, but again, I don't know everything, and in the end, and this is the paradox, is that I can talk about this and filibuster for like hours and hours and hours, but at the same time, like this is the kicker. This is what keeps me in my nook, so to speak. You know, keeps me humble. You know, is just remembering that basically it isn't me. It isn't about me. And like, I can say all these things till I'm blue in the face, and people will do what they're gonna do, and that's beautiful, and that's fine, and that's great. And and it's not about being right at the end of the day. It's about love and appreciation and compassion, And that's really, really, you know, again, that's the ticket. And, you know, for me, from my point of view. So yeah, so that feels like a good place to end this video. I'm going to post this now. Again, I didn't really expect this to go down the route it did, but hopefully, you know, hopefully it's been, you know, of use to someone out there. You know, I'm quite keen to get down what I wrote about, when I sort of started channeling about the Second World War, because I think this is important. And very, you know, I think it's an important line to draw, you know, because we are facing something similar right now. All right. So, okay. So take good care. Thank you.